So I was a martial artist when I was a kid. And
Mm.
like I said, I was a gymnast and a diver and a martial artist. But martial arts was what I loved. Taekwondo was what I did first. I was a black belt. I can't even remember, but like as a young teenager. And I competed in Taekwondo and sort of a semi-contact, which was really a full contact style of sort of mixed striking,
Mhm.
karate, taekwondo. There was I studied Sikaran, which is a Filipino kicking art that was modified from sort of the physical kicking aspects of artists. Like I've trained Savat. I'm a generalist.
Yeah.
So I have a second degree black belt in taekwondo. I have a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. I've been
Mhm.
belted and promoted in Muay Thai and different things, but
Mhm.
I'm a generalist. I love martial arts. And and as far as fighting, you can play the role of an analyst or commentator without it, because we just talked about that role.
Right.
That role can be emulated,
Right.
but you cannot actually understand. You can talk about it, you can interview people, you can try to dig, but 95, some astronomical percent of the information about fighting
Mhm.
is only available within the experience.
Mhm.
And if I grab a thousand fighters with 8, 10 fights, 20, 30, 50, but
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 950, 983 will say, yes, that's true. Nothing about fighting is how I thought it was before I fought. In fact, it was shocking how different. And almost nobody has ever fought and said, well, that's exactly what I thought it would be like. What they
Sure.
say is,
Sure.
holy shit, that was nothing like I thought, because
Yeah. Yeah.
it's processed through the perspective of our life and
Mhm.
our the moments of us living there and our physiology and testosterone and cortisol and
Mhm.
oxygenated hemoglobin and pressure and stress and fear and anxiety and
Yes, yes.
all of these things. They're not incidental, they are the experience.
Mhm.
You cannot throw that feeling that your hands have no strength in them in the moments before the fight. And I remember in my
Right.
sixth fight saying that to Joe Dirksen, who was on his 68th or 70th fight. And I was like, man, I feel like I just have no power in my hands. And he's like, me too, man, but it's like my 70th fight. It's normal, right?
Yeah.
You have to do that. Otherwise, you don't really know anything about fighting. You really don't.
Right.
It's nothing like you imagine it is.
Mhm.
And some people now, like I said, you grab 1,000 people who had fought, and 993 of them. There was some variation in how people interpret life in the world, but almost all of them will say that. If you grab 1,000 people who've never fought, 600 will be like, no, I think I understand it.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
like nobody who fought thinks that, but
Right.
many people who've never fought in their life will
I
argue
know.
that with
It's
the people who fought.
amazing. I know.
Yeah, it really is wild.
Yeah.
But they don't know what they don't know. It's not their
Right.
fault. It's impossible to know,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It would be like, have you ever taken mushrooms?
No, no, but
No. So
yeah.
certain hallucinogens,
Mhm.
the experience of taking them is so completely different than you think. It is impossible to imagine being on mushrooms. Like,
Sure.
it's just not possible. You
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
have
yeah.
the experience. You think you do, or you watch movies and people have trails behind their hands, but it's just not like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and it's because it's an altered state. And fighting, never mind kicks and punches and distance management and takedown
Right.
defense, any of these narratives, fighting takes place in a physiologically altered state,
Yeah.
biochemically altered state,
Yeah.
something we don't get to talk about much.
No, it's a
And
great.
when someone like me
Yeah, it's a good
says
thing.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, people think it's crazy because they don't hear it all the time, even
Yeah.
though if you sat down with most fighters and you talk to them about how the body works and how
Mhm.
hormones work and how neurotransmitters work, and they'd be
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, well, I've had that experience. Yeah, it's so different. It's like
Mhm.
tunnel. Some will say it's like tunnel vision. Some will say they can't hear anything. Some will say they can hear everything. Some will say time speeds up. Some will say it slows down.
Mhm.
But we sort of gloss over all of that when we're actually talking about it, even though that's some of the most meaningful stuff about fighting.
Fascinating.
So
Yeah.
you have to fight to know that. So I thought I would fight once or twice. I ended up having 9 pro fights. I had some kickboxing fights. I had 50 or 80 jiu-jitsu contests. I
Wow.
got bronze at Pan Ams and I won NAGA Worlds in my category. But
Mhm.
uh, you have to fight. Otherwise, you are emulating people who analyze fighting good enough to do the role. When somebody, let's say I just watched Daniel Cormier or Dominic Cruz or somebody very smart, and I saw kicking, and then they were talking about kicking, and I saw timing. I'm like, hey, wait, I understand timing. What I'm not hearing is all of the information that exists in their minds outside of what is being said.
Correct.
So I cannot hear what they don't say. Right. But 99% of the important information is what they are not saying. Right? It's just floating in their consciousness. It's in their awareness. It's in their skin and in their blood, right? So you can't do it without doing that. And I'm driven by curiosity. So I wanted to fight to understand it. I fought, I didn't understand it. I fought again, I really didn't understand it. I won, but I didn't understand it. And I won again. And now I sort of was able to have that experience where I could hear things and I could actually think. And then I had another fight where I couldn't. And then later, and there were 2, 3, 4 of them where I actually found the experience, that true flow state when you're fighting with another person and you are both. Bruce Lee called it choiceless awareness, where the choice, you're almost watching yourself make the right decisions.
Yeah. That's like the perfect nirvana, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's so fucking sweet. And